Okay, are you ready?
Ready.
Welcome to the True North Podcast, where two practicing lightworkers get together every week to continue an ongoing conversation about wholeness and healing for body and mind so that you can live as your true self and follow your true north. I'm Ryan.
Hello, I'm Abby.
I nailed that.
You did. Episode
I am
29. It took 29 episodes.
That's like when you get up at 6 a.m. and you work out and you're done and like the day hasn't really started, but you've already nailed it.
Yes.
That's how I feel right now. It's that good.
Ooh, that's a good
Like
feeling.
good AM CrossFit. Actually, for me, it was 5:30, but whatever. Who's counting?
Yeah, who's counting? That's early.
I couldn't do that again.
Mm-hmm.
How are you?
So, oh gosh.
Off to the races.
Loaded question.
Always.
I am fantastic. I did a full moon ritual last night.
Tell me about it.
It was amazing.
What did you do? What is your full moon ritual?
Okay, so I do a variety of things. So the full moon is all about amplification and illumination. So number one, like prior to doing the ritual, I kind of go through this journal exercise on reflecting, and I just think about all the things that need illuminated in my life, either positive or negative. Like I realized lately that I have a lot of negative self-talk, and I am not aware of it. And as much as I have a desire to be aware, I don't always know that I'm doing it. I'm addicted to my brain, to my ego brain. And so when that happens, it's like I'm just not always paying attention to it happening. And then every now and again, I'll get glimpses like, oh, yeah, that was negative. But it's way past the point of when it happened. So, I asked in my journaling to kind of be illuminated on when I am doing negative self-talk, like to somehow signal me, message me, ping me, hey, this is it. This is what it looks like. Because I am trying to kind of take some gifts that I have to the next level in regard to my intuition and some other things that I've got talent-wise in the spiritual world. But I have to right that ship first. I have to get rid of that negative self-talk and in order to start trusting myself and trusting my abilities. So I kind of I go through this journal exercise. What do I want to illuminate? And then I really go through a list of what do I want to release right now. And harness that lunar energy to help release and sort of cleanse and purify my life. So not only do I want the negative self-talk to be illuminated, just shed light on it for me, but I also want it to be released. I want to be able to have that helpful energy to release it, not just become aware of it. So I go through that sort of journaling process, and then the night of, typically what I do is I sit outside under the light of the moon, which last night was gorgeous. It was actually kind of cool. Clouds were all funky. Sometimes you could see the moon, sometimes you couldn't. It was in and out. And I basically just call in the guides and the angels, archangels, God, to be with me, and anybody not in my highest good was not welcome. What else do I do? So I light a candle just to kind of welcome in the light. And
are you outside when you do this?
Yes, okay. I am. Then I sage myself and I sage the area. So my son has this like playground in our backyard. Half of it is sort of covered, and then there's a platform that's not. And I sit up on that platform because then I do it more so I can see over the fence enough to catch the moon when it's rising. But I love the feeling of being like in a tree house. So when I go up there, and then I figure if I'm doing it up there, that's got to be all kinds of good mojo for him when he's playing on the playground.
Right.
So I sit up there on this platform, and then I sort of just go through this moon meditation where I say some things out loud, call in the help of lunar energy. I call out what I want to release. Talk about what do I want to embody in this next cycle. Like I really want to embody the archetype of a medicine woman and a healer, and tried to see if that'll show up more in my life. And so I ask for these things, ask for guidance and help. But then I also offer up things that need cleansing, Like typically my stones and my crystals that I've used for a while, my cards that just have had somebody else's energy or stuck energy, I'll take all those things out with me to be cleansed, to kind of be purified and then recharged with lots of really good, powerful energy. And then, so I've saged everything. Yeah, I offer it up. I'm going through everything. I also like to charge water. So I have some water that's charged, and I'll either drink it because it's purified water, and I will charge it with the moon and then drink it, or I will add it to like a bath for a purifying ritual in a bath. And then sort of depending on if I have time. And then I meditate, and that's when the crazy shit happens.
That's when okay, so what crazy shit happened this past time?
Ryan, there were whispers. What? It freaked me out. I thought somebody was in my backyard. It was so loud.
Audibly,
it was like
with your ears, you could hear them.
Yes, it was like two people going.
No way! Were you meditating or were you meditating?
Wait. People don't know what that is. Let's not talk about it yet. I was meditating, and I initially saw my guides dancing around a fire. Like
Do you normally see them?
No.
Is that a normal thing? Okay.
In my meditation?
Yeah.
Anytime? Or just
Anytime.
the moon meditation? Anytime.
Or
No, I usually either have to call them up. Sometimes if there's something they have to tell me, they appear, but it's not a general, they're just there every time. But in this moon meditation, I didn't see their faces, but I was in, I sit in this like upper altitude woodland forest. They had a fire going and they were like dancing in a circle. So I couldn't, they weren't there, like they were just doing like this dancing ceremony, and it was really weird. So I don't know if the whispers were coming from like things they might have been chanting, or if they were other things I was trying to hear. I'm not certain, but the whispering, and it wasn't audible enough for me to know what was being said. Wow. But I kid you not, like I opened my eyes really bright and looked around because I thought there were people in my backyard. It was that close.
This is something I hear a lot and experience a lot, where someone's in a meditation and there's some type of communication that they don't understand. Mm-hmm. Like for me, I've been in meditation and I've seen written like things inscribed on scrolls or hovering in front of me, like a hologram. And I go to a journal to try to capture it as best I can, and then I look at it and I'm like, this is not a fucking language.
Right.
But it is.
But
I just don't understand it. Or people have had like creatures or spirit guides talking at them and they know they're saying something, but they're just like, I don't understand what it is you're saying.
Like one of our tribe members with the octopus.
Yes.
As in her guide meditation. Like she
Which
didn't
if there
understand.
was an award for the coolest meditation anyone's ever had, that one would have won it.
Exactly. It
there
was
should
awesome.
be a movie about that. But yeah, like just I know you're talking to me and you know what you're saying, but I don't. Is that kind of what this was like? Like you knew that it was communicative, but you just didn't understand the language?
Yes. And so or that it just wasn't loud enough for me to hear, and that they were talking to each other about something. And so I just, of course, and like close my eyes really hard and I really try to focus in like, okay, I'm trying to hear, please let me hear, please. And I find myself getting desperate about it. And I'm like, okay, this is where you have to practice what you preach and stop holding an attachment to knowing what it says. Because when the time is right, I will know what it is. I will know who's talking. I will know what they're saying. It will come to light when it's supposed to. I think the point right now is just to listen. And I did get scared, and really loudly, William, he's a male guide, and his voice was like, do not be afraid. So.
Were you afraid before that moment?
I was. I literally was. It kind of scared me a little bit. Yeah. Because I thought somebody was watching me. I thought, and if it's not, I'm like, is this a dark spirit that's here? It was weird. But he told me not to be afraid. And so I trusted that.
Yeah.
And kept my eyes closed, grounded again to open back up and get out of my desperate attachment. And had a beautiful meditation. And then, so I had my session with Tony last week, as I talked about on the last episode as well. We're going to be talking to Tony here in a couple of weeks. And Gabriel has been busy sending me blessings in the form of birds. like close encounters with birds. And
Really?
I noticed it well before Tony even told me this was what was happening. And I was like, whoa, like something's going on. Something big is happening. And then I find out that's him. So I literally close out my meditation. You know, I'm bowing to honor my practice, and the loudest trill of a bird happens. Like, it is dead silent in my neighborhood. I do have on headphones to listen to some music, and yet this bird, and it was like this trill. It wasn't like a chirp chirp. It was a thing. I
And it
can't
was
believe
actually,
I just did that live.
I really can. Was it, and you know that it was something that was actually happening and not just like another thing that you were hearing?
Yes, that one was actually happening, because I'm pretty sure it was in the tree, like above my head.
Did you figure out what kind of bird it is?
No, I cannot. It's not one that I have in my yard on a regular basis. Wasn't a cardinal, wasn't a blue jay, wasn't a crow.
Something you hadn't ever heard or hadn't.
Like, I've
Like it was
heard
a new-
it, but
it was
I
a new
don't know. Yeah, but and certainly new to my backyards. And literally, like, the moment I've got my hands in prayer at my third eye and I'm bowing, and the minute that I bow is when it happens. And it's like, it trills like 5 or 6 times. I pull out an earbud to catch it and make sure it wasn't just my mind. And so that just made me like weep tears.
That was Gabriel being all, hello.
Like, you are being blessed, right? Everything that you are asking to release and illuminate, you are being blessed.
Okay, so tell me more about that. What are some of these experiences you've had with birds?
So, my recent trip to Colorado, I drove, and hawks were everywhere. And usually I see hawks when I drive home. That's kind of standard, but typically they're hanging out on a power line, a fence post. These hawks were literally fully open, flying down to the ground to capture some type of prey, but just like where they're doing that big, making their presence known, slowing themselves down to capture something. But then they're also swooping down at my head and getting like 5 feet within my space, both my car and then while I was out on walks. And then they'll circle, they'll circle, and then they'll fly off. And like this morning,
Wow.
after walking the dogs, I was coming back home. There's a ton of crows in our neighborhood, and I love them because they start going crazy when they spot a bobcat, and you can always tell when there's going to be a bobcat that pops out of the bushes, and just pay attention to the crows. But this morning, they're kind of like getting all up in arms about something, so I'm like looking around trying to pay attention, and 6 of them flew out of this tree and flew in this formation where 5 were in like almost a triangle shape, and then 1 was like this weird sort of flying back below. Like, you almost could, if you connected
Like
the
an arrow?
dots, like an arrow. Yes. And they were making a crowing sound, but not their typical like warning crow, not their typical just banter. It was an interesting crowing sound. And then the very specific formation. And they flew that way. And then the one tail one kind of went off and did his own thing. But the others in sort of this triangle shape flew off into the distance where I couldn't see them anymore, staying in that shape. Like, very noticeable.
Yeah.
Very noticeable things.
Like out of the ordinary, not what you would expect them to do type of things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then so when you have an experience like that, has that been confirmed for you that that's Gabriel sending you blessings that you've asked for, or?
I didn't even ask for blessings. That's just him sending
What
blessings.
a nice guy.
I know. And just to remember that, like, help me remember that I'm on the right track. I'm on the right path. And what I'm doing in that moment is accurate. And so he's sending the blessings to just sort of validate me to keep going. So I knew there was something there prior to Tony telling me where they were coming from.
Accurate is a really interesting word to use there.
Well, how so?
Well, I play chess daily on this chess app. And every time you play a game, it will analyze your movements and then give you feedback. And it'll actually let you replay through the game and tell you, you did really good here. You found the only good move. This was a mistake. That was a blunder. Try again. And at the end, it'll give you a number between 0 and 1, where it's like 0% and 100%, and it calls it your accuracy. I'm thinking, like, what? I think of accuracy like shooting at a bullseye, like how close you are to the target. And so I did some looking into it, and then it turns out that mathematically every move you make has a finite number of possible move combinations following it. And if you calculate that, you can figure out how many of those end in you winning, how many of those end in them winning, and how many end in a draw. Every single move. And so what this thing does is it looks at your move and it calculates how much this move turned the tides in your favor. And if every single time you do a move, it increases the odds that the end result will be you winning, then that's a more accurate move than something else. And so then, of course, you have trends where, like, people over the years and centuries have figured out what moves are just kind of classically understood to be your best bet to move in that direction. And those are called book moves. Like the textbook move for this is that everybody who knows how to win does this thing because it increases your odds the most. And so then you find that the more book moves you get into a match, the easier that match becomes for you because the greater your chances are that any move available to you is going to be one that's a higher accuracy. Like in the opening game, if you set yourself up right, then even if you just start doing your best guess or not even paying attention, or someone talks to you but you still play the game, if you set yourself up right, there's still a higher chance that the moves that you make are going to have a higher accuracy and still continue to increase the odds that the game's going to end with you winning. And so I've also kind of noticed that things in the True North world have gotten really easy for me and for us. Like there are certain things that we want to see happen, and those are happening with greater ease. And there's more clarity, and there's more, instant gratification, or more non-True North affirmations in each of our lives that what we're doing with True North is moving us in the direction it's supposed to go. It's almost like we've made a whole bunch of high accuracy moves on the chessboard, and now we're getting to a point where it's just easier to make high accuracy moves because of the pregame that we've set up for ourselves. And so I just I don't really come across the word accurate very often, unless we're talking about something like math or where there's like a specific bar for success. But yeah. Have you noticed that too? Like things have just, like there's just been there's swimming and then there's just floating in the current.
Yeah. Right.
And we started off really just like swimming. Okay, you got to move your arms, you got to kick your legs, you got to paddle, you got to do all this stuff, stay afloat. And then in the last couple of weeks, it's almost like this current took us and was like, okay, here you go.
It reminds me of Finding Nemo. When he rides with the sea turtles in the current.
Yes, that's what I feel like we what
Come
is it?
on,
What do they call
dude.
that?
Yeah, what do they call riding the current?
The something stream. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what the last couple of weeks have been.
But what if we have tapped into the stream of collective consciousness that is the universe, and now we really are riding the wave because we are doing the work.
We're doing the work on True North, but we're also doing the work on ourselves.
Yes.
And the more work that we do on ourselves, the more we find that work permeates what we do.
Yes.
So it's like a both and.
Well, I think you are your work, no matter what your profession may be. I mean, you could be an accountant, but if you aren't doing the work yourself, things will still not be easy for you as an accountant. Right? If that's still your calling to be a number cruncher, doing all that kind of data, bless those people. You still are only as good of an accountant as you are as a person.
Say more.
Eyebrows raising.
Say more words.
For example, taking a look at us, I feel things got a little stagnant and stuck for us a few months ago when I was sort of in my dark place. and things were not going right for me. And so when we are not aligned with that true north light and that love and light, then it's going to affect everything else you do. It's going to affect your relationships. It's going to affect the work that you put out. It's going to affect how you show up in this world for yourself, for others. It's going to affect it, positive or negative. And so, using the example of the accountant, if I'm an accountant and I'm in that dark place, then that's what I'm bringing to my work as an accountant. I may make more mistakes. It may be harder. I might miss something that's going to benefit somebody else. I might not feel passion or joy for what I'm doing or have purpose for it, or trying to think of a better way to explain this.
So I've been reading about the world of alchemy and trying to absorb some content there and gain some understanding into the whole history of that field of study. And one of the things I discovered early on is that they say that the alchemist is the alchemy.
The alchemist is the alchemy.
The alchemy. So if you think about alchemy, like, people in stories transmuting lead to gold, we'll just go there because that's kind of like the go-to thing that everyone thinks about. You're not a person transmuting one metal into another metal. You are understanding your connection to that element, and you're performing the transmutation on yourself.
Yes.
You're turning yourself from lead to gold, quote unquote.
Right.
And then the thing in front of you is just mirroring that back to you.
Mm-hmm.
Is that kind of what you're talking about? Like you, or like we think about it in terms of problems. Like, one of the benefits of being our tribe member is that all of our people can bring all of their problems to us. And they do. They do. Throughout the week, I found myself, talking with at least half of them through some of the stuff that they're going through. But I keep finding that I have learned something about myself in doing my own self-work that then is also helpful for them, which is my one of the things I've learned to do relationally recently is don't try to fix the problem, fix myself. Mm-hmm. If it's a problem for me, that doesn't mean it's a problem.
Right.
And if I'm trying to deal with the thing that's outside of myself and outside of my control, then we're just spinning in circles and not going anywhere. But if I address within myself, A, why it's a problem for me in the first place, and B, how am I contributing to the problems in the relationship, then all the fixing that I'm capable of doing is just within grasp all of a sudden, because it's all right here. Mm-hmm. And then once I kind of really internalized that and put it into practice and got some confirmations that that's an attitude that works best for me in the situation I'm in, I started asking myself, okay, well, what if I map that onto some of these stories I'm hearing from some of these people? And then after a couple lines of questioning and me getting curious and trying to meet them where they are and understand through their eyes, and I'm realizing, oh, well, don't try to fix this problem. Fix yourself. Mm-hmm. And it almost always goes down to, this is only a problem for you because you have unresolved stuff in you that you're looking to this thing to fulfill for you, and you should fulfill it for yourself. Or this is a problem of boundaries, where this is a real problem and it's getting all over you because you don't have firm boundaries, or whatever the case may be, right? Mm-hmm. But I'm learning that a really workable solution that I can provide to these people, it all comes down to focus less on the situation and more on yourself. Mm-hmm. And don't fix the situation, fix yourself. Mm-hmm. Because it goes back to what you're saying. I don't even need a certification. It's what you're saying. It's like you're only going to be as good in any external arena as you are internally. Yes, absolutely. Right. And so we are both kind of shoring it up in our own lives. Yeah. And that's kind of spilling into what we're doing with True North.
What we're doing, and even more so because the work that we're doing is on ourselves internally is what we do with True North. Like,
it is.
It's one and the same almost.
Yes, like True North is
an awesome job.
is the expression of
Yeah.
the growth that we're doing. We're just
Pretty
doing
much.
it publicly and in conjunction, and then we have, a trail of breadcrumbs that's 29 episodes long now.
Yes, absolutely. Right. And so that's why I always try to, when I see clients and they're telling me about their job, if you are in a job you don't love, get out. Get out, get out, get out, because we are all here, because that's going to affect you internally as well. So outwardly things, your jobs, your relationships can also affect you if they don't align with what you're here to learn, and they don't align with the soul lessons, the things, your true north light that you're here for.
What if the job is part of the soul lesson, though?
You won't be living it forever. Your lesson, they want you to learn the lessons. The lessons aren't necessarily supposed to be lifelong lessons. And they only are if you keep kind of beating your head up against the wall because you refuse to see it, you refuse to work on it. And so you keep having the same experiences over and over and over. So if the job is the life lesson, then be aware of that. Really dig deep on trying to figure out what that lesson is, so that when you know that you've met that lesson, and kind of like we've talked about recently as well, like when you've reached that point where you've tested out, you can then go find a job that you love. But I also don't think that a soul lesson has to come through a job. You can still learn the same lesson through a different route.
Well, when you said if you don't love your job, get out, I filtered that through what we just talked about, where it's don't fix the situation, fix yourself. So getting out of a job that you don't love would just be fixing the situation. Wouldn't it?
Not necessarily. You have to do the work first. So if you do the
fix
soul
yourself
work,
and then leave if you still hate it.
if you fixed yourself and you find that does not line up with you, then leave. But otherwise it might just be a matter of, nope, this is still where I need to be, but now I need to change the environment.
Right. And it may be that the reason you don't love your job
has something to do
with you, and
what you
it's
need
not
to fix.
really a problem. It's just a problem for you because and then it becomes a good tool for you to work out all of your hangups and stuff. And then when you do that, it's not, you find a way to love it, or you find a way to not hate it, or you can change it into something that works for you with your newfound sense of self and boundaries and stuff.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, we're done. That only took 28 minutes.
But wait, there's more. I want to hear about your moon ritual.
Oh,
because you did one as well, and I shared mine. I want to hear about yours, if you want to share.
I can share part of it.
Yes, I know you're still working on.
Well, I mean, yes. So I have some precious and semi-precious stones that I've used in my energy work before, and I did the same thing, but my way of cleansing them is to stick them in dirt. So I have my flower bed, and right where all the sunflowers were, I just kind of stuck them in and planted them like as though you're like propagating a seedling, like I just kind of like stuck them in there and nestled them all in, and then I just leave them alone. I don't really do too much other than just let them soak in the full moon. But I have my watch face telling me when the full moon is. So the first like full moon was Tuesday night, but it was really cloudy and rainy. And I had an idea of the ritual I was going to do. I don't know if I'm ever really going to talk about that here, but there's another part of my life that I'm kind of working on cultivating that involves doing some stuff out there. But I was looking for guidance on what I could do, because the full moon is a really big part of that right now. So in the middle of the day, I got a nudge to go do my arc method on myself. So I went to the cards and I did the thing, but then I was told like go do the yoga part outside. And I was like, but it's raining outside. And it's like, if your spirit guide could just give you a blank stare, that's what I was feeling like. I know, go do it outside. And it's so funny because like I didn't want to go out there because I would get wet, but then I take showers and it's the same thing. Like it was so stupid. And so I go and I did the yoga outside, but I I felt very compelled from the very first pose to just make noise.
Interesting.
Just make noise. And it came out as this like I'm sitting there and it was like a oh, and I just did that for as long as I possibly could. And then I kind of got this idea that is the frequency of my root.
Okay.
And then it was oh, I went up a third, and I was like, oh, there's the sacral, and so then I went all the way up, and I was kind of like being trained about what each chakra sounds like as translated through a sound from my own voice. Mm-hmm. And I think I told you about this. I don't know if you got to this part in the Vox, but there's a point in my range where to hit notes I have to switch to falsetto. Mm-hmm. Falsetto. So I was like, oh, something like that. And that break happened right between the throat and the third eye. So then third eye and crown were like a different thing altogether. Mm. And weirdly, like the throat chakra one was the one that was harder for me to do because it was right at my break, where like it's the weakest point of both my like chest voice and head voice, and so I had to figure out. And it was funny because as I was going back all the way down through, the motion I have to do in my throat to gracefully transition from my head voice to my chest voice is a swallowing motion. So as I went through the throat chakra, I literally had to like push the sound to the back of my throat and almost do this like energetic gulp to get it down into my chest cavity and then all the way back down to my root. And so I'm doing all this while sitting. And then, of course, I go through a couple of more motions and I realize that I'm still making this sound while I'm going through all these poses. I was out there for 30 minutes.
Okay.
And it got to a point where I forgot that I was even making sounds. But I was making sounds constantly. And then I realized that different poses and different motions made me make different sounds. And then, of course, those sounds were then assigned to colors. Those frequencies were assigned to colors. So then then it started to look like different poses had different color properties to them as well.
Which is interesting.
So I'm going through this and
you see color. You see sounds in color.
I do see sound as color. I hear a sound and my brain registers it as a color. I don't know if that's anatomical or psychological, and I tend to say that it's psychological, which, by the way, when we were at the retreat and we were doing the meditation where they walked us through the colors.
Yes.
He equated each note to a specific color, and it's different than how I see it.
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay, well, if I were to play the notes that I see in order of the rainbow, what would it sound like? And it was 3 very specific chords where you go up one and then down another. And I was like, oh, like that's something I've been exploring completely differently. Like, why are my colors and notes mapped onto those things in my brain? And then what, how can I wrap that around the rainbow to produce it? I'm exploring that too on the side, which is really interesting. But yeah, I did see these sounds as colors, and then the sounds attached to the poses colored the poses. And so then I was like moving through a rainbow as I moved through the yoga. But then the last few movements were, I went from a plank to a downward dog to a forward fold and then root to rise. And as I stood there in mountain pose, I was still making noise. And I looked around and the fence was oscillating.
What?
It was vibrating.
Oh my gosh.
And I thought maybe this is just the blood rushing to my head. But I went up slowly. I thought maybe, I have weird blood situation happening. And so then I stopped making the noise and then it stopped. And then I took some breaths and I kind of got myself to where I felt like I was back into a state of equilibrium. And then I started again and I could see it was like this, bubble. It was like a, I feel like I could see, like I was seeing the sound waves. Like everything I could see was distorted the way like a person underwater would be distorted from you looking from above because of the ripples in the surface. And it was just like bubble, 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 bubble. And I was watching and it wasn't colored. I wasn't seeing colors. I was just seeing like the distortion of like a wave distortion bouncing off of everything.
Like when you see a hot car, like in the heat, you look at, you see the heat waves coming off. Yeah.
Yes. It was like that. And then I started changing pitches and then the patterns made in the vibrations changed too.
Go faster or slower.
Like those cymatics things when you play sound through a membrane with like sand on it, it makes different patterns. But I could see it with my eyeballs.
That's awesome.
And I was like, whoa, that's so cool.
It's an
And so
amazing
that happened,
gift.
right. And it was in the rain. All this happened. I was soaking wet. This was happening like in the rain in the middle of the day. And so then I go inside and I was like, oh, I don't know what to do with that. Like I usually do this to learn something about my body. I didn't learn anything about my body, but I learned a lot about it was just this huge like sound needs to be incorporated into this thing.
Uh-huh.
So then go to Tuesday night when I'm doing this. I'm doing my ritual. And at one point, I found myself in the yard in the same place in the rain doing downward dog and going, oh, like as loud as I possibly could for an hour.
What? An hour?
It felt like maybe this was at 3:18.
Yeah, I remember you said you were out early.
AM.
You were in downward dog the whole time, or were you moving
The downward
through?
dog was a good part of it. I was moving through a few different stages of it, and I think the downward dog, I don't know how much. It felt like maybe 10 or 15 minutes.
And it was an hour.
Okay, so last full moon, I was working on a project that involved the full moon. Mm-hmm. But I thought it was like a set it and forget it thing. And I woke up at 3:26 a.m.
Yes.
And I had this idea that the moon woke me up. Like I had a very specific image of the moon and what she looked like, what the moon spirit looked like, felt like, acted like, sounded like. And it was like, wake up, do the thing. And I was like, no.
We need to
check
go
on the
back
thing.
to that.
Yes.
What she looks like, but keep going.
I can tell you because I still I have it written down because I wrote it down at 3:26 when I was in my half asleep stupor. But I didn't do it. It was like, go check on the thing. And I got up and I looked out the window and I was like, okay, there's the thing. Nothing's happening. Like, go outside. No, I'm not going to go outside. I went back to sleep. And then, and I was like, I think the moon woke me up last night. But that's such a crazy thing to say because it could have been I was just dreaming and I was like half awake, half dreaming, you know? And then I went on a little bit of another journey, which also has to do with the rainbow and how it maps onto celestial cycles, like the year, the day, and the lunar cycles. And 3:26 a.m. just happens to be the very beginning of a chapter of the day that's mapped onto the chakra that is represented by the moon. And so I thought, okay, that is really interesting. And then, but that's another thing I'm kind of like investigating on the side. I don't know how many sides I have, but I have all these sides. I'm investigating a bunch of things on the side, as if they're not all this different parts of the same puzzle. And so this month I was like, okay, I'm not gonna set my alarm because if it really was the moon that woke me up, it's gonna wake me up again. And that was at 3:26. So I was like, I went to sleep with every confidence that I'd wake up at 3:26. And of course, like you tell yourself, you go to sleep intent enough to wake up at a certain time. You're just going to wake up at a certain time, right? Like it's just your brain doing what you told it to do. So fully owning that, I was like, even if I wake up at 3:26 on my own without an alarm, that doesn't mean it's the moon. It's just my brain, right? But I woke up at 3:18 with the same image of the same little sprite bouncing around behind my head saying, prepare the meal. And I was like, oh, okay then.
Prepare the meal.
Okay. And then I realized that there were some parts of my ritual that I had gathered and set out to be ready in case I woke up at 3:26, and there were parts that I hadn't. And so by the time I went and got everything I needed to do this thing, I go outside, I have everything. It's 3:26 on the dot. I'm like, okay, cool. And so then we're doing all that stuff and then from that, and then I wasn't done until 4:26 on the dot a.m. So it was exactly an hour that I spent doing this thing, and it felt like 10 fucking minutes. And a good chunk of that was me in downward dog just oming at. And it was I was doing it as loudly as I possibly could, and it was like I was getting lightheaded, and I was like, it doesn't matter if I pass out, I'm still gonna be doing this. Like I'm gonna do this as long as I think I'm supposed to be doing it. And there were other things involved, but it was there were a couple of times that night that I was thinking, this is the weirdest thing I have ever done in my entire fucking life.
Yeah.
And I still did it, and I don't know. I still have no idea what. And after I was done, I got the idea that this is not the end of this process. Like I kind of followed my lead. I did the thing I needed to do, and I have a little bit of a. It's really hard to talk about this without talking about it. There are other steps that I didn't really realize were there that I now know are there. I just don't know what they are, so I'm just kind of in a waiting pattern to figure out what the next moves are. But it was a really. I feel like I just said a lot of nothing that's not going to mean anything to anybody.
Well, what it is though is your experience, and what I liked hearing you say is that it felt strange and weird sometimes, but you were just going to keep doing it. Like, you still felt moved to do it. And I just think that's an important takeaway. Like, our rituals looked completely different. Now, I had sound, but it wasn't chanting. It was my voice in a certain frequency that I tribe members have heard it on a meditation before, that's been recorded. You know, it just but it's so different. And I think that's the most important thing to remember, is like, there's not really a one size fits all for how, like, if our audience is interested in doing a moon ritual of their own, it doesn't really have to look a certain way. I think if you have certain elements to it, you treat it as a ritual, you treat it as something sacred that you do. But the one thing that I want to point out, because this was an interesting question from my wife, she's like, I want to hear about what you're doing. This is really exciting. You know, I just want to hear more about it. I feel like you're a Native American person or something. And I'm like, well, honestly, a medicine woman came up in my meditation in the morning. But the one thing I want to make clear is that these moon rituals are not worshiping the moon.
Right.
This is not a new form of religion that we're talking about. We are not out, you know, making the moon some other type of god. But what we are doing is recognizing that the moon, when it is full, has a very intense amount of energy. And so the rituals that we're doing are intended to harness that energy for us to use to practice love and light, to stay in love and light, to receive these gifts, to release what we need to release. Because I got another good question yesterday too about what does it mean to release? I was like, well, that's interesting, because, like, yes, I'm releasing negativity. I want to release negative self-talk, but there's also other things that you may need to release. Like, for example, this person I was having a conversation with is doing some internal work on one of their parents. And it's just sort of the clarity on why they are struggling with their parent is not really coming to light. And so one thing to ask to be released is sort of that stuckness of why that clarity is not coming, to kind of take them to the next level, to do that personal work, to figure out why I'm triggered by my parent. So a release is not always just something that you want to get rid of. A release might be something that you just need to bring to the surface within you, that you're working on, that you just are struggling with, that may not have to do with anything on the outside, but just internally in your own growth.
That is huge, because we are okay, so this is all coming full circle for me, because we're going to be interviewing Marie Manu. Did I spill the beans? Was that a secret? Well, we're going to be interviewing Marie Manuchehri, and so I'm reading her book Intuitive Self-Healing to kind of get ready for it. And that's a lot of what she says in that book, is like a lot of your sickness and your illness and your disease comes from emotional material, which is spiritual material that never got released, that you stored up, you pent up maybe for your entire life, and that caused your body to start malfunctioning in a way that corresponds to the type of energy and where you store it. And I experienced this myself, because I had I have some shame around an experience that I had earlier this year, and I brought that to my therapist on Monday when we talked, and she asked me about the shame. And I knew that I was feeling it right here in the middle of my solar plexus, like right at the bottom of my sternum. I could feel it right in there, right behind the bottom of my ribs, and it felt like gross. And I mean, that's a question that people don't really ask themselves, like, where in my body is this emotion? But if you had to ask and had to come up with an answer and open to it, your body will tell you. And then as I was, and she was basically saying, okay, well, tell me the story about the thing that you feel shame about. And I told her the story. And then she said, now I'm going to retell it to you in a way that is more neutral, fact-based, less loaded with all of your own crap, and reframe it using all the same facts that you told me in a way that doesn't make you the villain of the story. Because that's one of the things that I struggle with, is always feeling like I'm the antagonist. And so she did. She told me the story back in a way that kind of, has some compassion built in. And while she was telling me, I could feel that same energy moving up my sternum into my heart center and then coming out. And it was in the form of tears. So I'm on a walk because I always pop in my earbuds. I get on my phone and I just walk around this neighborhood. Mm-hmm. But I could feel it pouring out of my chest like I had a water cannon in my chest, like right where Iron Man's little thing is, and it was just all coming out. But then there were tears that were happening. And so I told her all this. I was like, it was in my solar plexus and it moved up to my heart and then it came out. And now I'm crying and I'm not feeling sadness. I'm not feeling things. It's just that my eyes are leaking. And that's my body response to the release of those emotions. Mm-hmm. And the funny thing is that my story that I told was, it baked into it was a whole lot of self-loathing. And her story was just about a transaction of energy. Neither good nor bad. It was just, there was some give and there was some take. And then I go to Manu Cherry's book, and the solar plexus chakra is all about self-love. Mm-hmm. And the heart chakra is all about give and take. Mm-hmm. And so that story had actual emotional embodiment, and it didn't have a way out because I was holding it in the wrong place. And because it was misplaced, it was kind of like not doing me any favors being there.
Right.
And so in her words and her reframing, she just moved it up, or she invited me to engage with what she was saying, and it moved up into the place where it needed to, it found its exit, and then it exited. And it also just so happens that I've been having like some really weird indigestion, even though my diet hasn't changed and my GI system has been all kind of messed up, but I couldn't really think of anything mechanistic to point it to. Mm-hmm. But then ever since then, my stomach has been fine.
Interesting. Yeah.
And it was just a matter of release. That thing was in there and it didn't have a way out. Yeah. And she helped me give it a way out, and then it got out. Mm-hmm.
I completely believe, and this is the next step in my work, that we've talked about this, but you can cure your ailments through releasing all of this stuck energy. And it's typically from emotional and spiritual trauma. Yes.
Yes.
Physical too, absolutely, but certainly the emotional piece. Yeah.
So release. And then, of course, the moon energy is the healing energy, and I'm learning that a lot of the type of healing that we do in our line of work is really just giving the body permission to release the things that it's been holding on to for too long.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. And so this is interesting. So one thing that I've kind of learned recently is, okay, so there's this release. You just had this release. Mm-hmm. And I knew this logically, where when you release something, then you now have space for something else. Mm-hmm. So I use a tool called Clearing the Clutter, where if people are really trying to figure out what is stuck inside them, I use their living space as a metaphor to help them see that, because I distract their ego mind long enough for the soul mind to speak and tell you what it is. So then we work on your physical living space in order to open up that space inside you, inside your soul, for growth. But what I recently have been learning, which of course this makes a lot of sense, but I've just never learned to ask until now. You then need to ask for the space to be filled with everything in your highest good. Like that has to be an ask. So, because if not, then anything can come back and fill it up, because you now have an empty space and the empty space has to be filled. So you can either bring that back in, whatever it is you just released. For example, I just had to release some embarrassment that was sitting in my sacral chakra, kind of between my sacral chakra and my solar plexus. I had some embarrassment sitting in there around a family member, and I kind of had to deal with that and release it. But once that goes, like there is a space there where it was. And so something else has to go back. I don't want that to come back in. And if I don't consciously choose something else, it will come back in because it is very strong and it has had a hold on me 40 some years. So,
Wow.
that was kind of mind blowing for me recently. So I'm saying this, number one, also because you did have a big release. What do you want to fill it with? Like that's, and if you don't know, then literally just asking that what comes back is in your highest good, and that what you're meant to learn from it, or what is meant to be highlighted will be made known to you. But no matter what it is, it's not the return of the thing that's negative or heavy or doesn't serve you.
That is I haven't heard that. I don't know that I've heard that.
That came from Tony. So that's a good question. I'm going to write that down.
Yeah, I'll put that in the little questions thing. Where did that come from? Tony, you want to watch something cool happen? I'm going to release some fear-based and baseless projection right now.
Okay.
So, I did not come here expecting to do this, but my full moon ritual, the pieces I left out because I was trying to protect myself from people thinking I'm crazy.
Ah.
Understandably
so we're back
so.
Understandably so. That means you believe you're crazy.
No, I believe that it's understandable to believe that people will start to think I'm crazy if I say what I'm about to say.
Okay, so you're sitting in what other people think about you.
I am. And I was letting that stop me from saying things.
Okay.
When instead I should just not care if people think I'm a crazy person.
No, you're going to respectfully not give a shit.
Yes.
And then, okay, that's a whole lot of unpacking. Say what you need to say.
Well, I just feel like I gave enough about my moon ritual to let people know that there's shit I don't want to tell them. And that's just not, that's like saying, I have a secret, and then not telling you what it is. It doesn't help anybody. If anything, it's just obnoxious. So, I have actually begun to embark on the journey of learning alchemy. Like actual alchemy. I say actual alchemy as though like other people's versions aren't legit, but like there's...
Would you please explain what alchemy is?
Okay, so that's the thing, is alchemy is not necessarily something that you do, but rather the name that we give to a journey people go on to become. And so people look at the tangibles, people look at what you do, you look up alchemy online, and everybody's distilling gold into this powder that's supposed to make people superhuman. But that's just chemistry. When I look deep into the roots of the things that alchemy is built upon, it comes from this idea. I'm going to say the sentence, everything has a soul, but after planting that seed, I'm going to pivot it a little bit and say that everything has soul. Not like you think about when it comes to like music, but as though soul itself is a substance. So it's you just have to operate from that place. To the point where I was taking a shower and I was engaging with that idea, saying, does this shower have a soul? Not necessarily the water coming in from the faucet, washing over me and then going down the drain, but the event of that specific shower. Born when I turned it on, died when I turned it off.
Okay.
Does that thing have a soul? And so
that
then I talked that event.
Okay.
I talked to that shower as though it had a soul and said, do you have a soul? And I got a response. I had an experience with that shower where it went from me scrubbing myself to get clean to me having a dance with something that waited its entire life for me to understand that it existed and had consciousness.
Okay.
Whether or not that's actually something that fits within our general model of reality, I definitely had that experience of shower, which completely changed my relationship with the idea of shower. And so, you know, what I've been going on is this idea of every single thing that I experience, questioning, does it have a soul? And then trying on for size how I would interact with it as though the answer was yes. And so then when you're interacting with the material world, soul to soul, you begin to build connections with material things the way you do with people.
Okay.
when I had one of my very first breakthroughs in healing was, instead of trying to use my energy to change what's happening in their body, I think I talked about this on the podcast. Instead, I would build a bridge between my body and theirs and connect them, and then perform the healing on myself. And I tried that on my mom when I started getting my leg pain, because she had a problem in her lower back. And this was the first time I tried this. I built a bridge, heart to heart. And then I sent the energy to my own lower back right there. I felt the warmth. I was focused all on this. And then all of a sudden, her lower back pain was gone. And it was like, well, it wasn't all of a sudden. It was later that night she realized that she didn't have the back pain anymore, and it never came back. And then I had the back pain. And then that turned into the sciatica that still flares up every now and then, right? That is alchemy. The alchemist is the alchemy. You're building a bond with a thing and affecting the change in yourself, and then the other thing you've built a bond with reflects that change. And so then, when you quote-unquote perform alchemy, all the physical, tangible event is doing is basically giving you a grade on how well you're doing on your own self-transformation. So take the stories of an alchemist turning lead into gold. If they can do that, they don't give a fuck about the gold.
Right.
It's just the tangible universe saying, yes, you got it. That's an A. You did the thing, and here's your evidence. But then the gold is useful for other people.
Sure.
And so then, as you grow as a person and as you develop into the fullness of the spiritual being that you are, alchemy is a way to do that development. It's a way to do that growth. It's a methodology for executing on that growth. And as you do that, as you go about it, you're also interacting with the material world in ways that it reflects back to you how well you're doing. And when you do it well, and when you're on the right track and you're doing what you need to do and you're experiencing the growth, then the thing that you're interacting with will reflect that back to you, and the end product will be something that it wasn't before that is helpful for other people. In a way that you don't really care about. It's not really something that you need. And when it happens, it doesn't really, all it is for something for you to give away.
Right. Yeah.
And the reason why that happens is because the more you develop, the more you grow, the more you become a pure and potent gift to everyone whose life you're a part of. And then the very act of giving away the thing is an act of giving away yourself, because then your growth also happens to be something that impacts them in an intangible way as well.
Right.
So all alchemy really is you're inviting the physical world to reflect to you the non-physical parts of your own journey. And so what I'm learning how to do, it is supposed to produce a tangible thing that is supposed to be helpful in a very specific way to a couple of very specific people. And right now it involves the full moon. And I have two guides that kind of sit behind me and are kind of, essentially the way I'm learning how to do it, other than reading, is going into daily meditations and going through kind of some really trippy experiences and taking notes and kind of interpreting them with guidance. But my understanding is that these other two guides that don't really speak English, like my two guides that talk to me, they talk to me in a way I can understand. These two just kind of sound like wind chimes. But I have this understanding that they are the ones writing the software for the program that I'm running when I go into those meditations, for me to have the experiences I'm having, to interpret them the way that I interpret them, to then execute the way that I need to execute them. And I believe that the two of them, they're both moon spirits. One is ours and one is a different one that is orbiting Jupiter.
Okay.
And they're working together to teach me this thing. And what I wrote that night when the moon woke me up at 3:26 was, the moon is a happy, small, fat, female, white, plump bird. And so I pictured this glowing, white, fat, round, bouncy, happy, Pokemon-like bird thing that's just jumping around like, hey, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. We're going to do a thing. We're going to do a thing. And I also got a lot of interesting, I gained a lot of understanding about what moons are spiritually and the role that they play and what they're here to do and kind of what they're made up of in the non-physical world, and this very special relationship between our Earth and our moon doesn't really seem to be the case in any other planet and their moons. And weirdly enough, I'm kind of constructing this idea that the whole Adam and Eve story is actually a story of our Earth and our moon.
Interesting.
Like creation story 2.0. Anyway, so that's all the stuff that I didn't want to say because people would think I was crazy and challenge why do you believe that and how do you believe that and prove it and all the other shit that I get mixed up in. And now it's out there. It's out there in the world. And so my moon ritual it involved a coconut husk and sunflowers and a bunch of ocean water and me doing a downward dog over this little apparatus and going, oh, for 30 minutes straight, at least.
Okay, for the record, that doesn't sound crazy to me.
I knew it wouldn't sound crazy to you.
Fascinating. It does.
So
I think just keep your respectfully not give a shit hat on when
well, I have to now.
When people come. And the thing is, when people are asking you that and they're questioning why you believe this and where'd you get your information, if you see it through the lens of they had a hysterectomy, they're very curious about your process in a way that it sounds like they're also searching for something that they don't have answers to. And in a way, it may not be your thing, but what they're really seeking as they're judging you, so to speak, or that's how it's coming across and triggering you, is that they're really saying is, I am searching for something and I am lost and I am trying to find it. And it sounds like you did. And now that's what I want.
Well, the good thing is that this is all going to become my third book.
There you go.
The first two are good. Spoken for.
You better get busy writing.
I am. This is my writing week.
Yay! Good.
So, all right. Well, what are you grateful for? I feel weird. I feel weird in my body having said all that. Like, it's all out there now.
I know, and this will be a good time to process it. I'm really proud of you. I didn't think... And you owned it. You didn't say it because you were worried about what other people would think. You owned that.
Well,
that's big.
Marcus Aurelius wrote in his journal that he would wear clothing that was culturally unacceptable and hideous just for the express purpose of inviting ridicule, for the express purpose of developing a resilience against it. Mm-hmm. So, that's not the reason I said all this, but I am open to the experience of inviting a lot of opportunity for me to put my defenses down and practice not living in fear of what people think. So, so there's that. I'm becoming an alchemist. You hear that confidence? I don't.
Love it. You don't? Go back and listen.
I will.
Listen.
I will. Go back and listen on 2x speed.
Yeah. Oh, how do you do that? How do you do that? I'm grateful you can do that because you can probably get through a lot of information.
I do. Well, that's why I do it. You can do it on 1x, on 1.5x for a while, then you go to 2x. But then you get used to hearing people that speed, so that then if someone says something like you really want to hear and you go back to 1x, it sounds like they're speaking so slow. Or in my case, if there's a podcast I listen to a lot, and then I actually end up on the phone with one of the co-hosts and I hear them in real time. Yeah. It was so hard for me to not to be like, why are you talking so slowly? Because I realize I've never...
You trained your brain.
Yes.
That person speaks at that speed.
Yes. And I'm like, oh, this is how you actually sound. Oh, wow. Anyway.
That's actually kind of funny.
Well, how often do you actually listen to a podcast on 2x expecting to hear that person talk to you in 1x?
Well, that's true. That's very true. That's a beautiful gift. Yeah.
It is. It was a very beautiful gift.
All right. What are you grateful for today? I haven't said mine yet, but you go for it.
I'm grateful for this recording. This particular episode. I'm grateful that both of us said the things that we said in the last hour. That's it.
In full disclosure, I was also very nervous talking about my moon ritual.
Really?
Because clearly it could come across as if I'm worshiping the moon. And that's the last thing I want people to think. Because then it seems woo-woo and hokey and weird. Like you're a weirdo.
How funny is it that we have said everything we've said on this podcast and we're still worried about people thinking we're woo-woo? If they've gotten this far, We've already weeded out the people who think we're woo-woo.
This is true.
Like
This is true. If you're 29 episodes in, you are not rolling your eyes like, oh, that's so woo-woo.
You would have stopped listening so long ago when we were
That's a
talking
very
about
good point.
spirit guides if you thought that this was woo-woo.
Yep, that is a very,
But yeah, we're both
very
like,
good
how much
point.
do I want to reveal to these people who
know.
clearly don't think we're crazy no matter what we say at this point? Oh my
Yes,
God.
but I did. I even on our new Instagram page, which is at True North with Abby and Ryan. That's our handle.
At True North with Abby and Ryan.
I know it's long. It's long, but
That's
it's
what she
there.
said.
I posted some of the things that I was going to be using for my ritual, and even that was just like, do I post this? Do I not? But the truth is, at the end of the day, I am grateful that I have this practice. I'm grateful that I have this ritual in my life because it is very feeding for my soul and it does energize me. And so I'm grateful for being brave to just put it out there and say, look, this is who I am. And yep, if you think that's woo-woo and you don't like it, then I respectfully don't give a shit. Then you are not in my tribe. We're just not, this isn't your tribe. We're not meant to connect at this time in our lives. So I guess, yeah, that's what I'm grateful for, is that we were able to, despite the ego mind throwing shit our way, that we're able to override it and be our true selves.
That's the base note here, is we both came out here to talk soul stuff, and we both were fighting our ego stuff the whole time.
The whole time. Yep.
But we did it. We made it.
See, and so you can too. Like, it's practice.
And we're never not going to have that ego.
Exactly.
We're going to be 300 episodes in and still be like, people are going to think we're woo-woo for what we're talking about. I don't want to say this on the internet.
I can't have this recorded.
I have a feeling things are also going to get a lot weirder. That's the thing, is once I get comfortable with my level of weirdness, then all of a sudden someone's like, oh, by the way, I'm the moon and I'm going to teach you alchemy. And I'm like, well, that's weird. And then once I'm comfortable with that, there's more.
Not so weird after
Abby
all.
and Ryan lead you into weirdness.
Yep. That's
Well,
so true.
Until next time, everyone. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for being there.
Oh. We are grateful for you. Thank you for listening. And if you like what we're doing and you want more, then you can join our tribe to interact with other like-minded individuals. You can go through our Patreon page, which is patreon.com/True North Podcast 11.
Is it Podcast 11 or is it True North 11?
Oh, shit.
It's in our show notes. If you want more than that, you want some more hands-on healing stuff that we do, I do actual energy healing and body work, and Abby does life coaching and workshops. And you can find the URLs in our show notes when we figure out what they are.
And we are always trying to increase our reach and bring more people to find their true north. So we would really appreciate it if you could leave a review and rate it in whatever podcast platform you use.
Done. That's perfect.
What about the gratitude?
This one. Hang on. And one last thing. What are you grateful for? There. I said it. I said the thing.